10 years after the close of the Second Vatican Council, which closed in 1965, Pope Paul VI wrote in Evangelize of the Second Vatican Council, the objectives of which are summed up in this single one: to make the Church of the 20th century ever better fitted for proclaiming the gospel to the people of the 20th century. You're with Mission Alive. This is Roger from MSC Mission Office. In this document, Evangelize, Pope Paul clearly defined the Church in terms of evangelizing, that the Church exists in order to evangelize. No other purpose. If it is not evangelizing, it is no longer church. I just want today to reflect a little bit on some of the saints we've celebrated this week who were evangelizers, and a number of them were martyrs in the work of evangelization. On Tuesday we had Justin Martyr. He's one of the early Christian thinkers, a philosopher, and left his mark on the church and how we understood ourselves. And it was interesting that he said that in regard to true religion that predated Christianity, that the seeds of Christianity actually predated Christ's incarnation. Big words, theological, philosophical approach. But in the Old Testament, many times, the Word of God was mentioned. The Word of God was addressed to the prophet such and such, or the prophet such and such received the Word of God like this. And in St. John's Gospel, the Word was made flesh and lived among us. So this Word of God that was there at creation existed before the incarnation of Jesus Christ as the Word of God. That's what St. Justin was on about. So he was martyred alongside with some of his students, and is venerated as a saint by the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, and the Oriental Orthodox Churches. So he is a man of great note. On Wednesday, we had St. Marcellinus and Peter, who were both martyrs of the 2nd century in Rome. Not much is known about them, except that one, Marcellinus, was a priest, Peter was an exorcist, and they died in the year 304. On Thursday, we have Charles Lwanga, an African martyr. Was a Ugandan convert to the Catholic Church. Is martyred for his faith. He was of the Baganda tribe and born in the kingdom of Buganda. Within that, the king, Mwanga I of Buganda, was resisting the colonial influence and the church influence, which often went together. And this is where the political side of life comes in. Politically, he was probably being threatened by an overpowering outside force, threatening his position and his authority as a king. So he wanted to stamp this out. So he insisted that Christian converts abandon their new faith, and he executed many Anglicans and Catholics between 1885 and 1887, including Lwanga and other officials in the royal court or those who were close to him. So this too is part of the evangelizing effort of the church, and we belong to the real world. We belong to the world where politics influences religion and religion influences politics. Friday, today, is Saint Boniface. He's also one of the great saints of Europe and a great saint to the Germanic people, to the Germanic parts of the Frankish Empire during the 8th century. So it's early on in the history of the church. He was martyred in 754. And it was interesting, he was venerated as a saint in the Christian church and became the patron saint of Germania, known as the apostle to the Germans. And it is said of him, he is one of the truly outstanding creators of the first Europe. As the apostle of Germania, the reformer of the Frankish Church, and chief fomenter of the alliance between the papacy and the Carolingian family, one of the key noble families of the time. So a man of great influence in the world at that time, in his evangelizing effort, and where that led him in terms of reforming people, reforming society, so many great things. So in the history of the church as an evangelizer, that we have many saints who were great in that and gave their lives to bring the good news and proclaim the good news to others. And in the modern days too, we have other examples of that. However, all those stories for another time. So the mission goes on. Thank you for being with us.